Welcome back, everyone. Back for another episode with my roommate Anthony Paventa, talking about some hot topics in sports and everything that's been going on. We've had a long break here since Thanksgiving, but we're ready to dive into some juicy topics that have consumed the sports world as of late. And speaking of which, we're going to dive right into the very first topic that just happened roughly an hour ago. Patrick Corbin, free agent from Arizona, has decided to sign with the Nationals for a 6-year, roughly $125 million contract with the Nationals. $140 million. Excuse me. $140 million over the course of 6 years with no opt-out for the Washington Nationals. Meaning their 1-2-3 rotation is Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, and Patrick Corbin. And the Yankees were high on getting Patrick Corbin this year, but they didn't offer him any more than a 5-year deal. What does this mean for the Yankees? And does it mean Bryce Harper is all but gone from Washington?
Well, it basically means that the Yankees simply just didn't covet Corbin as much as the Nationals, or I guess the Phillies did, because I've heard that the Phillies also offered 5 years. They weren't going 6, which I was surprised about because they came out today saying that they were not going to be outbid, and they in fact were outbid by Washington, hence they did not get him. Whenever the Yankees don't really like somebody, they're just going to put their feelers around and they're going to offer the contract that they feel most comfortable with. And 5 years, $100 million was their offer, and it just didn't pan out that way. So it's time for plan B. You still got Nathan Eovaldi on the free agent market, Dallas Keuchel on the free agent market, Jay Happ on the free agent market. Corey Kluber is still available in trades. Madison Bumgarner is made available in trades. There are many different ways to go about this, and they can allocate the money that they didn't spend on Corbin to fix up the starting rotation, get another really good pitcher in that rotation, sign 2 guys for the bullpen, and maybe even get Manny Machado here or Bryce Harper.
Yeah, I think it puts the Yankees in a bind, to be honest with you, because throughout the entire November and late October, all we heard was Patrick Corbin and the Yankees since he's from there. And now you don't get him. And he was your top guy probably to get in free agency. We've heard more rumors of him going to the Yankees than we have with Bryce Harper or Machado, who have been linked to the Yankees since we first got here back in 2015. So now you mentioned some names that are out on the market. I don't know who they will go after, to be honest with you. Because all those guys that are out there right now, Eovaldi, Happ, maybe even Keuchel, they can all sign for a cheaper amount. So you got to figure they're going to sign 2 of them, maybe, to fill it out, and then they'll go after someone else. I'm not sure what their plan B is. We haven't heard of a plan B for their pitching rotation, but they need to find someone that can give them a good 20 to 25 starts a year to fill out that entire rotation, because their rotation is one of the biggest things that has held them back in recent years, and especially last year against Boston. If they have a solid 4 or 5 guys, maybe they can get it done. But all they had last year was Severino, who was good for a game, Tanaka, Happ, and Sabathia. Let's be honest, he's past his prime. Sabathia should be a bullpen guy at this point.
They brought back Sabathia, and they brought in Paxton, who some people
Paxton's
say
good,
is better than Corbin.
but they still need one more.
aspects.
They still need one more. 2 more, I would say. I say you need someone to get in there for Sabathia in case age starts to take a wear on him.
Exactly.
For Harper,
you need at least 7 starters in this.
I don't think you need 7. 6 is fine. 6 is fine because you have Sheffield and your
Sheffield's gone.
Oh, well, he's gone.
Sheffield got traded for Paxton earlier this month.
Well, then it's last
they
month.
Still have Chance Adams. They still have Chance Adams in their system. They still have Domingo Herman in their system. They have other pitchers within their organization, but they need guys like a Corey Kluber, who I truly believe Cashman is having his eyes on, or Carlos Carrasco, someone like that. It's not over yet, and there's still a lot of alternatives out there.
I think for Harper, though, it means he won't go back to Washington. Because I can't see Washington crippling their salary cap on Harper and Corbin. Harper alone would have been a financial burden on them with the salary Scherzer has and Strasburg has. Now you're giving Corbin over $20 million, almost $25 million a year. Between him,
is that 22, 23?
it's closer to 25. It might be 24, to be honest. But still, between him, Scherzer, and Strasburg, you got close to $100 million in annual salary.
Yeah.
There's no chance. If Harper turned down $300 million, he's not going back to Washington now. So now it opens up the gates for all the other teams that have big banks, like the Mariners, the Yankees, the Red Sox maybe, the Angels, the Dodgers, the Cubs. The Phillies have a ton of money. It opens up Pandora's box for him to go to all those other teams now. Mm-hmm. I think he's done in Washington.
Do you have an early prediction as to who do you think he would lean to?
He's trimming his hair. He's going to the Yankees. Or,
maybe.
Best case scenario, he's coming to New York, and he's coming to Queens.
Maybe. Or the Dodgers, or the Cubs,
he's
or the
coming
Phillies.
to Queens.
There's a lot.
Screw the Yankees. He's coming to Queens.
There's a lot of options.
Moving along to Queens, in the last week or so, the Mets were able to pull off the biggest blockbuster trade of the offseason so far, trading away Jay Bruce and some other prospects on their roster for Robinson Cano and Edwin Diaz. Cano was suspended for 80 games last year due to a PED suspension, his only of his career, and Edwin Diaz went 57 saves last year in 61 appearances, and the Mariners won every game he pitched in. Anthony, the Mets fans are upset that they gave up too much for Cano and Diaz. The Mets are saying we're in a win now scenario and these two guys help us. Who do you think won this trade?
I think both teams won in certain aspects. I think that the Mariners got rid of that horrific contract, even though they
they're still paying some of it. They're still paying some of it.
Still paying some of it, and they did acquire 2 other contracts also. But Jay Bruce only has 2 years left, and Swarzak, I believe, only has 1 left. So Cano was one of the big things they wanted to get rid of. So they did that. So that's a mission accomplished for them. And Edwin Diaz was a commodity that they piggybacked. No, that they piggybacked Cano onto Diaz so that the trade would be more enticing. The Mets now have a really stellar hitter on their team, and they have a lights-out reliever, which is something that they have not had for a while.
Man, Jerry's Familia.
Well, he really.
Given he got traded last year, but the year before, he was the best relief. 2 years ago, he was the best relief pitcher in baseball and the best closer. Or was it in 2015? 2015 he was. He led them to the World Series. He had over 60 saves that season.
We can also look at that Kansas City bullpen, because that's the team that ended up winning the whole thing. But moving on, it's a great trade for both teams, I believe. And the thing is that it's a risk that you take, because when you have that pitching staff in a 2 to 3 year window that it really has, you have to cash in. So we'll see where it goes. I think that the National League East is becoming one of the more tougher divisions in the entire sport, because the Braves are moving up. The Phillies are definitely moving up. They tried to get Corbin today. They got Gene Segura the day before, and they're probably going to go out. They're going to try to get Harper. That's my pick. Who's probably going to get Harper is Philly.
So then where's Machado going?
That I do not know. Maybe the Yankees or maybe the Phillies. Who really knows?
They're not getting Machado, Harper, and then Mike Trout next year.
Exactly. No. But we'll see what happens. The Phillies are moving up. Who's the other team? The Nationals. The Nationals just made that signing today. The Nationals are still there. And the Marlins, one of these days, is going to show up. This is going to be a tough division to win for the Mets, in my opinion.
The easy answer is the Mets won this trade entirely. The Mariners are taking a complete gamble. The prospects the Mets traded away weren't even their top prospects. They were highly regarded prospects, but they weren't the best ones. So the Mariners are taking a chance that 4 or 5 years from now, they're going to be stars. And there's no guarantee of that.
But this wasn't a trade so they can get better. This is a trade to get Cano out of there.
That's fine. But you don't make a trade to get worse. No team ever makes a trade to get worse. the Mets won because they got Cano for a bargain because they're only paying him $12 million a year instead of, what was it, 20, 25 million a year?
24.
24. So they're paying half his salary. So they're getting Cano's production for half the price while the Mariners pay the other half. And then you have Edwin Diaz, who is probably one of the best relievers in baseball right now. I don't know if I'd give him the best one, but he's top 2. And like we mentioned earlier, he had 57 saves last year. It solves the Mets' problem with a bullpen. So now if Jacob deGrom ever does get a lead, he won't end up 10-9 like he was this past year with like 10 no decisions thrown on top of it. And a Cy Young for him will be justified if he goes 24-5 or something like that. Now, and the Mets answer another thing by getting a big hitter. I think Cano is a much better slugger than Jay Bruce is. I really do.
Yeah.
And with that, their outfield is secure now. You know, they got Cespedes for at least this next year. They have Robinson Cano.
They have Cespedes for this year and the year after that.
So they signed him for longer term? All right, so
Well,
they got...
it was a 4-year contract signed before 2017.
All right.
Yeah.
So they got those two. They got young outfielders that are obviously going to help them out tremendously. They can rotate them in and out. So this way Cano doesn't have to play every day, or same with Cespedes, to keep him off the injury books. Now the Mets need to work on their actual relief pitching, maybe get another starter, because I'm not entirely confident in, just 3 pitchers of DeGrom, Syndergaard, and Matz. I'm not even entirely confident in Matz. I think they still need someone else. So maybe they do go after Evaldi or a Keuchel. It was mentioned that they might go after Kluber.
I doubt
they'll need some infield help. Whether it's, you ask Bryce Harper to play first base and you give him that kind of money for it.
I believe.
Hey, if Harper went to the Yankees, they'd probably be asking him to play first base because they have an outfield already with Stanton, Judge, Hicks, everyone else. So the infield is where they can go. Maybe they'll go after Machado and get someone to play third or shortstop. We'll see. But
the Mets the Mets deal is this: they need a catcher. They have. I think that their infield is set. They put Jeff McNeil at third base, his natural position. You have Rosario at short, Cano at second base, and Dominic Smith at first base. And
that infield can get better though.
It can get better, but
Robinson Cano is the best. Robinson Cano and Rosario, I think, are fine in there. But Dominic Smith at first base, I mean, come on. And then this whole, what was it, Jeff McNeil guy or Ed McNeil?
Jeff McNeil.
I've never heard of him before.
He is a natural third baseman.
Is Manny Machado.
He's played a great, but I get more Machado than Harper because Harper.
I'm just not convinced that this Jeff McNeil guy, who I never heard about until free agency started, and I watched the Mets games. You know that. I never heard of him. I know he's a decent prospect and whatnot. I never heard or seen him on any other news show other than maybe the Michael Kay show where people are talking about he's this next great third baseman. No one's talking about him like that. You should go out and get an established guy. Now, Donaldson would have been the easier answer because he would have been cheaper than Machado.
He's on the Braves.
But he already signed with Atlanta. But in short term, I think the Mets won this trade.
Yeah, the one thing you got to worry about with Cano is 2 things. Number 1, if for some reason he does a stupid thing and is not off it really wasn't a PED. It was a diuretic. If he's still on that,
well, it's a PED.
Yeah, it's still a PED. If he stupidly is still on that stuff and he gets popped again, that is a full year suspension.
It is, and it's a risk. But I don't see Cano doing that. I don't see him being like the Henry Mejia guy. Who is banned, by the way.
Yeah. Risk number 2. He's in a national league. There is no DH. Cano is going to be playing second base for over 150 games this year. You cannot move him to any other position other than probably first base. And I doubt that the Mets are investing money in him to do that. So that's going to be another risk right there.
Moving along to the National Football League now. Plenty of storylines to take away from the past 2-3 weeks. We'll start with one of the most obvious ones and one of the most disturbing ones that has come to light as of last week in Kareem Hunt. Video surfaced from an incident in February where Hunt got into an altercation and a fight with a female who refused to do things for him and his posse, entourage, I should say, in a hotel. Hunt then didn't assault her. Well, he did assault her. He hit her and kicked her while she was down on the ground. Since then, he has been placed on the commissioner's exempt list, which means he's still receiving the rest of his guaranteed money that the Chiefs owed him. However, the Chiefs have cut him, and he is currently on waivers. Or he has cleared waivers, he is a free agent. However, pending the results of the investigation, he can still be suspended. And given the scenarios with things like Ray Rice, Greg Hardy, players that have this happen, and when the video surfaces, tend to not come back. So, Ant, very simply, will Kareem Hunt get another chance in the NFL?
I believe 100% he will. The biggest reason why no one's picked him up when he cleared waivers because he got suspended 6 games. It just wouldn't make sense.
He's not suspended 6 games. They can suspend him more than 6 games.
Yeah, but like it wouldn't make sense for a team to pick him up this year, but next year, let's say.
If they picked him up now, they only misses 2 games next year.
That's what I mean. But I think that people will wait. I feel like they'll wait until the smoke is cleared a little bit in the off season. They'll pick him up and then
the smoke will never clear.
Number one, I heard that
this is going to linger and hang over him forever. Okay, if Ray Rice, who by the way came out, admitted he did wrong, has done numerous projects to rebrand himself and make better on what has done, and formally has apologized to everyone you could possibly imagine, okay, has done everything in his power to deserve a second chance in the NFL, and no team has given him one. And that video came out 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, 2014. If he can't get another chance doing all that, there's no chance Kareem Hunt is going to get another one. Greg Hardy did get another one after being initially suspended for, I think he got suspended for 4 games. And keep in mind, he didn't come out and admit he was wrong or anything. And then court records show that the only reason he won is because the woman that he brutally assaulted, who had the images on her back, by the way, from the incident, was too afraid to show up in court that he would go on the rage on her. And now he's out once those pictures surfaced and that report came out.
How old was Ray Rice when that video came out?
He was about 27.
Was he 27?
He was not 30.
So he was relatively young.
He's young.
How old's Kareem Hunt?
Kareem Hunt, I believe, he's at least 23, I would think.
23. So he is younger. Now, not much of an age difference there because I'm looking.
But he's only played for a year and a half in the league, though.
Yeah, but he's also one of the more explosive young running backs in the league who is still under a rookie contract.
Not anymore.
Well, yeah.
No, he's no longer considered a rookie. Once you get released from your rookie contract, he's still going to have. If some team were to pick him up, he would sign for a lot less money now because he's only been in the league for a year and a half. So he's still considered, he's not a veteran yet. You need at least 3 years in the NFL to be considered a veteran, which is why after 3 years you hear all these players talking about, I want an extension, because now they're veterans. Now they can get that kind of money. He can't yet for another year and a half of service in the league.
Yeah.
But I don't see him. You know where I see him going? I see him going to the XFL. That's where I think he's going to end up. He won't come back to the NFL because no team is going to take a gamble on him. Although, Washington just took the gamble of a lifetime on Reuben Foster, who's not even
going to play.
No, he may never come back, even though, it's the second accusation on him, and this one he's actually guilty of. The first one he wasn't. That was proven.
Yeah.
But still.
Was Kareem Hunt even, did they, look into the entire situation?
Yes.
And see, and, that it was,
Yes.
It was
completely. The NFL claimed that the only people that were able to get the video was the police department in Cleveland, which is where the incident happened.
Yeah.
And everyone's saying, well, how can the NFL, worth billions of dollars, not get that video? The hotel for which Hunt was at said it's policy that we don't distribute it to anyone other than law enforcement until it is the investigation is done, which clearly it is now because it got released. And then law enforcement said, no, it's a matter, we're handling it. So in the end, though, I don't see him moving anywhere into the NFL anytime soon. Maybe at the turn of the decade, because that's 2 years from now. But at that point, I think he'll be in the XFL. Moving along to our next NFL topic. Normally, you don't see too many coaches get fired in the middle of a season, especially when they spend 13 years at one. But Mike McCarthy was fired after the Packers lost this past Sunday to the Cardinals at home in Lambeau. And McCarthy was one of the better coaches in the NFL and had a very successful career, albeit he had Brett Favre for a couple years and he's had Aaron Rodgers for the majority of this entire decade when healthy. Who should be the next head coach of the Green Bay Packers now? And where does Mike McCarthy go from here?
I don't really know much of like head coaches who are in line to get jobs, like ones that are that are on the market. Definitely, it'll definitely be someone that is more offensive, that is more of an offensive head coach, because that's just what the Packers run on mostly when you have Aaron Rodgers on your team. I don't know. I could say, though, on Mike McCarthy's sake, a team like the Browns or the Jets maybe would pique his interest. You know, isn't Mike McCarthy is an offensive-minded coach, or is he?
He did call the plays, yes.
He's an offensive. Yeah, that's exactly what Gang Green needs, since Todd Bowles is probably going to get fired at the end of the year. So the Jets would be perfect. The Browns would be perfect. Mike McCarthy working with Baker Mayfield might be stellar. Also, Mike McCarthy working with Sam Darnold would be perfect. You need an offensive-minded head coach is a hot commodity in this league, and Mike McCarthy has had a couple of stumbling years, but I really don't think that should define his time as a head coach, because he did win a Super Bowl.
He's won over 160 games, I think.
Yep.
Or maybe not that many.
Now
that's a lot. But I think he has over 100 wins with the Packers.
Now that Super Bowl was a while ago.
It was 2010, I believe.
2010. So 8 years ago. It still happened, He had a couple of stumbling years, and
not his fault.
It just really wasn't,
Rodgers got injured a couple of years.
And how about the Packer front office sign some backs on defense to help, the offense out,
That's what they'll have to do. In short term, I think the most logical option for Mike McCarthy is to go to the Browns. I think he would fit there with Baker Mayfield. I think he'll like Baker Mayfield more than Sam Darnold. I think Darnold will be better long term, but I think right now it's better for him to go to Baker Mayfield because they have more of a team there established so far. It's the one time when someone would say, let me go to Cleveland and coach the Browns before I go to New York and coach the Jets. With regards to the Packers, it'll be interesting. There's not too many coaches out on the market that you would think of that are worthy or deserving of being a coach. Obviously, someone like, Hugh Jackson, I don't think fits in a a Green Bay environment. I don't think Ben McAdoo goes back to Green Bay. I don't think even if Pete Carroll was done, he'd go there. Urban Meyer retired today, which we'll get to next, but I think he's actually done coaching now. I don't see him going to Green Bay. If I had to pick one name, the most likely one for Green Bay, I'd go Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma. Reason being, he runs an up-tempo offense that likes to throw the ball and it downfield, and it seems more catered and tailored for Aaron Rodgers, especially in this part of his career. Maybe, he stays away from it because he says, hey, Rodgers is in his mid-30s now. I don't want to take that gamble. He's only around for another 5 years. I don't want to be here for 5 years and looking on the job market again. So maybe he doesn't. But I think if one of the top candidates for the Packers is likely going to be Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma. Moving along to college football now, we are going to talk next about the big news from today also, which was that Urban Meyer has decided to retire from coaching effective after the Rose Bowl on January 1st. And Meyer has been coaching for 17 years. He went to Bowling Green for 2 years. Then he went to Utah for 2 years. Then he spent 6 years in Florida. And he has spent the last 7 at Ohio State, compiling an 82-9 record, which is unprecedented, including an undefeated record against Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Where does he rank amongst your best college coaches of all time, and how do you think he's going to end up being remembered?
I think he's definitely top 5. I'd put him at number 5 always. He's going to be obviously under Nick Saban and Bear Bryant and the coaches like that. I don't know if you would put him. Would you put him below Joe Pa?
I put him ahead of Joe Pa.
You put him ahead of
I put Joe Pa right behind him, despite
You
Paterno. And the reason being, Urban has 3 championships. Paterno has 2. He has one more championship. And remember this: Paterno coached for 46 years, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And he got 2 of them, and they were both in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Meyer coached as a head coach for 17 years, and he got 3. And the past 3 seasons. 1 year he was in contention for a championship. He made the playoff. And the last 2 he just missed out. So I think, he's ahead of Paterno slightly. In my own personal opinion, I would have him as number 5 as well. I'd have Saban number 1. That's a topic for another day, but Nick Saban is the GOAT, in my opinion. Bear Bryant would be number 2. I would honestly have Woody Hayes at number 3 and Tom Osborne at 4. Just because of what they were able to do in their success, and then Urban at 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be remembered as a great college coach. Obviously, this is what a lot of sports shows at ESPN or Bleacher Report or CBS or a lot of other networks are going to talk about. Obviously, is did what happened this past offseason in August contribute to his retiring right now, and is there something else potentially lingering from it? And the truthful answer is I don't think there is, to be honest with you. I think that incident was like a one-time thing. He doesn't strike you as a guy that is going to keep stuff secret and not say stuff. Every coach is obviously not going to tell the media every single thing that happens in their program. It's all about being confidential, keeping it in-house. But, some people are going to remember him for what happened this past year. And like I told a lot of people when I was home back when this was all unfolding in August, the reason Urban Meyer did not get fired from Ohio State is because he actually did more for the situation to help it and he could have taken more action, which is the one thing he should have done. I'm not saying, he's 100% innocent, because he should have taken more action. But the one thing he did do is he took a little more action and measures than some of the other college coaches that we've heard about that got in trouble for scandals that did end up fired. Like Art Briles got fired. Joe Paterno ended up getting fired. So I think I'm going to personally remember him more as a college football coach and not so much as, what happened this past year. Will I remember it? Yes. But when you mention Urban Meyer to me, I'm going to think of his years at Florida and Ohio State, not the incident that happened this past August with Zach Smith.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my own personal take on it. Moving along into our last topic for this video, the college football playoff was recently announced this past Sunday with Alabama 13-0, SEC champions undefeated. Clemson 13-0, undefeated ACC champions. Notre Dame 12-0, undefeated. And at number 4 was a 12-1 Oklahoma squad that was Big 12 champs that avenged their only loss on the season by beating Texas in the Big 12 championship game. Mm-hmm. Notably left out was Georgia, whose 2 losses came to Alabama in a close game, and LSU. Ohio State, who was a 1-loss Big 10 champ, but got blown out by 29 points to Purdue, but probably had the 2 best wins of Oklahoma, Georgia, and Ohio State. Anthony, did the committee get it right this year?
100%. 100%. Oklahoma, it's you just said it. they avenged the only loss that they had in the entire season, and it was in the biggest game of their regular season, and that was the Big 12 championship where it truly mattered. And I remember watching that Ohio State game against Purdue. It was really bad, and those losses count for a lot. And it all depends on strength of schedule, who you're playing, what you win by, what you lose by. It's all different factors, and everybody seems to be objecting to the current college to the college playoff structure, how they should expand it to 16 teams, and it's as of right now it's 4, and it's going to stay like that for a while. Maybe it could change later on. I don't know. But I think that the top 4 that the committee chose was absolutely perfect.
I agree with you 100%. Their objective is to put the 4 best teams in the playoff. And I think if you did Oklahoma and Georgia on a neutral field, I think Oklahoma would be able to outscore Georgia in the end of it. Georgia's defense might be able to throw off Oklahoma for a bit, but I don't know if it would be able to contain them. Ohio State, they had too many close games this year. With Indiana, Nebraska, Maryland, all teams they probably should have lost to.
Almost lost to Penn State, too.
Almost lost to Penn State. Yes, they did blow out Michigan, but, in the end, it was too close for them. As a result of it, though, I disagree with you that a 16-team playoff is going to come about. I can't see that happening for probably a decade and a half. Maybe 2 decades. Because that's how stubborn these people are in these rooms that are in charge of conferences and ADs at schools. What I can see happening in the next 5 years is an 8-team playoff where each conference champion gets in.
Mm-hmm.
SEC, ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, and Big 10.
And
you leave 3 wild cards. And the 3 wild cards would be 2 of them go to the Power 5 conferences, including independents, which allows for teams like Notre Dame to get in who are independents, but it also leaves the door open for teams like Georgia, and it leaves teams for Michigan.
And
the final spot,
UCF too.
And the final spot is for the highest non-Power 5 ranked team in the standings, or the best non-Power 5 team that the committee deems worthy enough, which in this case would be UCF. Now, obviously that could stir up some controversy, because hypothetically, if you take this year, for example, okay, you put in the 5 champs, so you would have Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Washington, okay? And if you're putting in the non-Power 5, obviously it'd be UCF. Now you got 3 other teams, though, for those final 2 spots in Notre Dame, Michigan, and Georgia. Georgia has 2 losses. Michigan's only loss would be to the Big 10 champs. Notre Dame would be undefeated. And Georgia's 2 losses, one's to the SEC champ, the other one isn't. Personally, in my opinion, then Georgia would have to get left out, despite, playing probably a tougher schedule than Notre Dame did or Michigan did. But at the end of the day, I don't know if Georgia, has that signature win this year. So that would be it. And I think that's like the 8 teams that would make it in an 8-team playoff. But the committee got it right this year. And I don't think the committee has ever got it wrong in the 5 years they've been doing this. I really don't. Mm-hmm. And I can't see them getting it wrong in future years. I've actually predicted that they have the 4 that I've been able to predict the past number of years are all the ones that have gotten in. So I'm perfect.
So
as we close out here, though, this episode, real quick, the Heisman Trophy is this Saturday evening. Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray, and Tua Tagovailoa, sorry if I mispronounced that, hard to pronounce, are the 3 finalists for the Heisman. In 5 words or less, who's your winner?
Tua, I think. Very explosive. Just very explosive and an absolutely incredible season by him. I think he deserves it.
I think that was more than 5 words. But the short answer is Tua, 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 Tua. End the story. Mm-hmm. Best season of anyone in college football.
Well,
that wraps up this episode. Thank you all for listening to it. We'll be back soon with another episode talking about more topics in sports. Hopefully, more basketball will have commenced. We can talk more about that and talk about some other interesting topics that consume the sports world. That's Anthony Paventa. I'm Nick Deej. So long.